what do you think is the average cost for a meal in Brisbane?
The average cost for a meal?
Yes.
It's difficult to say. Within a market space, I would think that you're probably, a main meal where you're saying lunch or a dinner, you're probably getting to around $12 to $15 tops. I mean, if you go to somewhere like in the market here, you'll get a meal that you would struggle to get through for about $11, $12. Market then put on, if you're a retail spot, probably a couple of extra dollars on that, 4 or 5, for your leasing and your electricity and not your staff, because it's really expensive to do staff at the moment in shops. So $4 or $5 on top of that, you might be looking at about $18 to $19 in a restaurant cafe.
And then how much do you think someone should pay for a meal?
Well, I'm sort of trapped in the hard place. Being here in the market, working with a lot of the producers, it's difficult to say because I know how much some of these guys don't make from their produce because of the way that the big machine works, and some of them probably make more than they actually let you guys know. So it's kind of 50-50. I think probably price point wise, $12, $13 is around about right, given the labour cost of getting to it, getting to that meal in the first place, the producing of it, the before and after the actual meal is made. There's a lot of cost in that as well. So.
And do you think the restaurants in Brisbane have good value for money?
I think what you're finding in Brisbane, especially in most restaurants in Australia, is they're having a real problem competing with price. The biggest problem you have at the moment is the cost of labour, and that's not to say that we don't deserve our money, because we do. Cost of labour is expensive in Australia in general, and so it's driving the price of food up, because to pick a lettuce now costs more money, to pick a tomato costs more money, but then to cut them up and make them into a salad costs you even more money. So it is costing a lot more money, but I think you're probably finding a trend where your ready to eat and your fast turnaround type things are becoming more of the norm, and people are going to those more because they are more value for money. The higher end restaurants that are doing your high end service, they're probably dropping off because they're so expensive to do. They have to carry waiters or sommeliers, like the wine people, that cost them twice as much as a normal person would cost them. It's a lot of money to hold, so if you don't get a lot of people through the door, it quickly eats into your profits that you may have made the week before. So it's difficult, but I think Australia in general, and Brisbane especially, is growing to a trend of a cheaper, ready to eat, looks good type meal, not a tablecloths and high service.
And what do you think the most popular food destinations are in Brisbane?
Most popular? Look, I think you probably find that things like Eat Street, the markets, more events and festivals and food trucks are really taking over. I think people are now becoming more savvy with their money, and they're a lot more conscious of where they're spending it and how it's being spent. So if they're not getting that return, either service or food flavour, they're not coming back. And I think you can't beat a truck. Whilst the truck costs, a food truck can cost anywhere from $80,000 to about $140,000 to put it on the road. That's still a lot of outlay for someone. It's a lot of sausages or tacos to sell. But they're selling it with a story behind it, as well as it's a beautiful, well-presented meal. People are doing it a lot more regularly. I think they're probably food trucks and Eat Streets and those things are becoming more popular. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know if people are going to go back to wanting to be served, by a waiter and they come around and I don't know if that'll. I think everyone's getting pretty used to the idea of just ordering it comes out and they're done.
And what are the most popular restaurants in Brisbane, and why so?
It's a very good question. I think most popular is kind of subjective. There's a whole bunch of just restaurants that have just popped up. I know that Jamie's restaurant,
Jamie's Italian.
Jamie's Italian, that's it. Jamie's Italian is very popular, more because I think again that story thing, the story behind it, it helps sell the meal. I mean, I think most people in the restaurant game at the moment are probably the best of their game because it's become so hard to make money that only those that know what they're doing have been able to stay. So it's probably good in a way for us, all of us gastronomes that like to eat. I don't know, Jamie's, you still got your things like jellyfish and cha-cha-cha and steak restaurants are becoming very popular, although they will, mark my words, they'll become very expensive soon because the drought is creating a real strain on proper beef prices, and the exporting of the good beef, because we don't see the good beef that gets exported, it's going to make it even more expensive. So if you've got a big freezer at home, freeze up the meat.
Do you know if there's any celebrity chefs that work in Brisbane restaurants?
There's a few. Some of them have moved on to just doing catering and their own business. Alistair McLeod, who used to have a stall in our markets and still comes back from time to time, he had to quit because he was so busy with catering. I think Darren, what's his name? Irish. He works for the markets for us. Irish chef, he used to be in Sydney. Darren something or other. He's been on a few. He's working for us at the moment doing some catering. There's a few. Most of the ones that are involved in restaurants are doing other things. They might be doing some catering, or they do events as such. I don't know how many restaurants still hold. Phil, there's a guy that owns Echo Bistro. He still does first class foods for the airliners, and he still has his restaurants here in Brisbane. He also is going to do a market stall. He hasn't decided yet, so it's not as many, I guess. They're all off doing catering.
And how do you think these celebrities affect the restaurants themselves or the markets?
No, I think it's a healthy mix. I think celebrities draw people's attention to food and good food. Draws their attention to become more educated about it. I think some people get too far ahead of themselves, and we find that a lot where people say, well, that only should cost this much because I make it at home, but a lot of different variables in it. But I think it's a great thing. The more food shows there are on television, the better it is for everyone in general, because it educates people to get more love and passion for their food, and then they go and buy food, and then they experiment, and that's pretty much what it's about. Cooking is experimenting.
And how do restaurants develop a welcoming atmosphere?
I think as soon as you walk in the door, if you don't feel welcome, it goes downhill from there. So you've got to make sure your staff are open, positive, understanding of what's going on around you. I won't be with you in a second, I won't be long, I'll be there in a second. So there's a fair few variables within that, but if they take an optimistic and positive outlook on it and a happy view, it's the fastest way to getting someone to stay at your restaurant.
Cultures influence Brisbane's food and dining options the most.
Which cultures? Oh, I don't know at the moment. I think, what do you think? I don't know if we've got one particular one. I think that's probably why we're lucky here. We have a whole variety of different things. I think we can go within the markets here, and on weekends we can go anywhere from Vietnam to Japan to South America to Germany and right through Europe. So I don't think there's any one thing that really is defining anything at the moment. I think everyone's sort of taking a bit of everything. I think it's whatever I think everyone's using, and this goes back to the chef thing, they're looking for the freshest, most beautiful produce, and then they get excited about making something from there. So that may be something that's Vietnamese inspired, or it may be something that's European inspired, but it's based upon the produce that's available at the time, and that's a big key at the moment. Produce at the moment is being dictated to by the supermarkets, and that's why we have a big problem as markets. Growers can grow their stuff, but see, 90% of their farm might be bought by Coles, so they only have this much to sell, which makes it difficult for everyone else to get that. Like supermarkets take up the bulk, and they sell a bit of stuff on the side of the markets to get it for cash, but then restaurants miss out, and it's changing the playing field at the moment for our produce.
So yesterday we conducted some interviews to the general public, and it showed that most people prefer to eat at restaurants which use local produce. With saying that, do Brisbane restaurants use local produce, and if so, how does this add to their food quality?
I think a lot of restaurants, and we find it here at the markets, a lot of people ask where they get this, and they intertwine with each other to find out who's giving what to where. Fresh local produce is the number one seller for anyone, and if you're a producer that's got fresh, if you don't have a license on your sale of your produce, then you're usually trying to get it into a local restaurant, either here or Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast. So that sort of, I guess, the region from Gold Coast right up to Sunshine Coast and Brisbane in between is pretty important, wouldn't you say? I think we get a lot of local producers supplying locally.
Yeah.
And that's what that lady was saying before. Liz from Reed Street here, she was talking about she doesn't do a lot of wholesale because of that reason. She specifically goes to where she needs to go. So it's a hard game now at the moment, buying and selling fruit and vegetables and produce to people, and meats and things. Restaurants, again, people like to be served, but the prices are astronomical. So then it comes back to, well, then how do you make a cheap restaurant? You cut your labour costs down, but then you've got no one to serve the people, and they're not happy, so they might as well go to somewhere in a car. So it's catch-22.
And do you know of Brisbane restaurants that buy produce from these markets?
Yes, we've got even Noosa Red's tomatoes. At one stage, I think about a month ago, they couldn't come to the markets because their first is the supply of restaurants, the second is us, and then the third is anyone else outside of that. And they didn't have enough produce to go around, so they had to stop going.